when the women got in the workforce there. Now they don't get paid for what they do because they're women there. And I don't care what sex they are, what color they are. If they do the work, they should get paid for it. But I don't know what's going to happen on that there. But the women furnished us up with what we needed. And that's how we won the war, because they did what we had to have, and they furnished us with it.
That's a fascinating tidbit to share for a lot of people to understand how that was a major breakthrough out of tragedy to bring women into more mainstream roles with men, and the heroic and courageous efforts they did and on that. And
yeah, now we got women on the ships there, commanding officers of the ships. They do everything. The jockeys, race drivers, everything here, because up to that point, the women were second class citizens there. The men brought in the income, but they were gone. And so the women stepped in and did what they had to do.
Now, when President Roosevelt asked for a declaration of war from Congress, he got it. I think there was only one dissenting vote, Jeanette Rankin, I believe. And but we also declared war on Germany, because Germany had also declared war coinciding with the attack on Pearl Harbor. Is that correct?
That's right. Germany didn't want to get in the war with the United States, because I think they're going back to how the United States helped in World War One. They didn't want to get the United States in the war, but then when Japan started the war, and Japan was already an ally of Germany, so then Germany declared war on the United States, because up to that time, our ships were being sunk in the Atlantic because we were not in the war and they were not protected there. And as a result there, when we stepped in, we got in the war, our ships were being protected there, and Germany weren't doing so good as what they were doing before, because they were sinking all kinds of our ships because they were not protected.
Now, what thoughts do you recall at that period of time, yourself and your colleagues, for us to go into a war then in Europe, Asia, the Atlantic, Pacific? That's a pretty big undertaking.
Yeah.
Did you have doubts about our capability to do something like that?
Well, when you think back about how we helped out in the World War One, we had to do something, because some of our people, even before we got in the war, some of our pilots were joined the RAF, Royal Air Force. They're flying with it. Some were with the Flying Tigers in the Pacific with General Chenault there. Some of our people wanted to help, even though we were not in the war. So some of the people were for it, and a lot of people were against it. And our big wheels in Washington there kept us out of the war until Pearl Harbor, and then we had to get in the war.
Now, the ship you were on, the USS Pennsylvania, was damaged. It was in dry dock. There were casualties. What happened to the ship after Pearl Harbor? Did it had to go undergo repairs? And
we only had that one hit at Pearl Harbor, that 500-pound bomb. It did not hurt our watertight integrity. It's less than 2 weeks. We were on our way back to San Francisco, get patched up, get new guns there, and get ready for fighting the war. We were an old battleship built in I think it's commissioned in 1916 there. We do about 15 knots downhill with a tailwind. We didn't have the speed it had, so all we could do is help them with fire support, which we did there during the war.
So the Pennsylvania, under its own power, went back to San Francisco to, was it Hunter Yard, to undergo repairs?
Well, we went to Hunter's Point.
Hunter's Point
is where the overhaul place, because there's dry docks also there. So we were in Hunter's Point, and I think we ended up at Bethlehem Steel getting new guns and to get ready to fight a war. And then we started training there and get ready, because war is on.
Okay, and with that, Mickey, we're going to take a brief pause here for a public service announcement.
It appears these hot ashes are about to be dumped, which could possibly start a wildfire. How will Smokey deal with such a hot situation? The garden hose defense. Next, a thorough stir. Then another spray. And finally, feeling if the ashes are cool.
Oh, yeah.
Ah, yes, the selfie. A ritual practiced so frequently with this tribe, but not so much by Smokey Bear.
Only you can prevent wildfires.
Got a quarter?
Welcome back to Interesting People. My name is Tom Lorentzen, the host of this show. My guest today is Mr. Mickey Ganitch, a veteran of Pearl Harbor from December 7th, 1941, 75 years ago this year. He was on board of the USS Pennsylvania, one of 8 battleships in Pearl Harbor at that time, and it was in dry dock. And I'm going to hold up a photograph here for you, Mickey, and tell us a little bit about the ship and where you were at the time of the attack.
My living compartment of quartermaster, which I was, is way back here. My battle station is up here in the crow's nest, way up the top. That was my battle station there. A bomb, in the second attack, a bomb came in past me, went through 2 decks and exploded. Way down here, if it exploded on contact, I wouldn't be here talking to you there. It's kind of scary to see this big hole alongside of it. When the bomb hits, 500-pound bomb hits there, it expands quite a bit. It's maybe this big here to start with there, but it's the area there that covers there is pretty bad. But we lost 23 men that particular
Now,
day.
Mickey, you said this battleship was built in 1915, 16?
1915, I think it's commissioned 1916.
Because it looks very contemporary. It must have been a state-of-the-art ship.
Well, it was pretty good. 608 feet long there, 33,000 ton there. It's pretty formidable.
Well, no wonder the Japanese wanted to take out the battleships.
Because up to that time, the strength of the Navy was battleships, and we had 8 of them. Of course, we were the newer ones were the California, the Maryland, the Tennessee, and West Virginia. They were the new ones there. The Arizona, the Oklahoma, and Nevada, and us were the oldest battleships there. We had 14-inch guns. The newer battleships had 16-inch guns on them.
Now, I understand that Nevada got underway and tried to get out of the harbor.
Yeah, that was a disaster. I think that would have been if they would have been sunk in the channel. Nobody would have been able to get in or out there. That was foolish. What was one ship going to do against a Japanese fleet? Of course, they didn't know how many people would be out there, but it sounds real good that they got underway and then see what they could do. But it would have been a disaster. I think it had been crazy because once the Japanese saw that the ship was heading for the channel, they had bombs going or torpedoes going, anything, sink it in the channel, or they wanted to sink it. But the crew of the USS Nevada saw what was going, so they beached it. They run it aground there before it could get out in the channel where it'd be sunk, where nobody would have got out. It would have been a disaster.
Yeah, I can see that. So with the Pennsylvania, you came back to San Francisco. The ship went under repairs at Hunters Point with Bethlehem Steel, and then you spend the next 3.5 years in the Pacific.
Well, the first thing we had, which really helped us there, was Jimmy Doolittle. The morale of the United States was very bad because Japan had been run all over the Pacific, and Germany was taking over so much of Europe there. The morale of the United States was really bad, and they decided they better do something. They found a man by the name of Jimmy Doolittle. He was Air Force at that time. His Army Air Corps. There wasn't no Air Force. Later on, there was the Air Force, but his Army Air Corps, and they devised a plan that they would attack Japan. They would be on an aircraft carrier. 16 bombers on an aircraft carrier there, get close to Japan, bomb Japan, and then continue on to China where fields were prepared for them. It's a great plan there. They were detected early, so they had to take off early. But think about airfield, how big an airfield is, and think about bombers that have to take off of an aircraft carrier. It's a Hornet there, not the one that's Alameda now. It's the one that they had before in World War II. And think about what they had to do to take off for the short distance. They unloaded everything they could except a few bombs that they had to make it as light as possible there too, because they needed to get as far as they could. They didn't do much damage, but they did two things. Japan saw that they were attacked there, so they pulled a lot of their troops, a lot of their ships back to the mainland there in case they were invaded. Secondly, it helped the morale of the United States. We were doing something. We were fighting back here. So it did those two things. Then 2 months later, we had what they called the turning point of the war. It had a battle of Midway. Japan figured there that they weren't able to get the United States to surrender by taking the Hawaiian Islands. So they tried to get Midway. They figured if they could get Midway Island, they'd have a stepping stone. They could bomb Hawaiian Islands and we would give up. But the way it was, they were detected. Ships were sunk. A lot of the good pilots were sunk. That's what they called the turning point of the war. Because from then on, we were fighting back here.
Now, was the Pennsylvania in the Battle of Midway?
No, we were a backstop. We were in between Midway and San Francisco. I think it quite a ways there because we were so slow. We kind of be the last resort, I think, there. If they got past the people at Midway, then I don't think we would have been much of a problem because we were so slow. So we were there, and we didn't find this out till later. In fact, we didn't even know about the Battle of Midway until after it was already gone. But that was a turning point there, and from then on we started fighting back. And my ship was used for fire support. Since we were so old there and used it for fire support, the first thing that my ship had to do in World War II was the invasion of Attu Islands, which is the westernmost part of the Aleutian Islands. Mm-hmm. Then we bombed Attu. After Attu, we bombed Kiska because Japan had already taken Kiska, which is on the mainland, almost on the mainland of the Alaska. We bombed it. Planes bombed it also. All we found is one dog. Japan had left there. Evidently, they saw the handwriting on the wall, and as a result, they pulled the troops out. There was nobody there except the dog. I'm not sure whether it's a friendly dog or not there, but that was all that's left. So then my ship was used in the invasion of Makin Island, Kwajalein, Eniwetok, Palau, Saipan, Guam, and Philippines there. All those for fire support, for not shooting at any ships there. It's just for fire support for those various invasions. We was doing our part, but we were too slow to keep up with aircraft carriers and cruisers there. So, but fire support was our specialty, and we were good. We were good.
I'm sure you were, Mickey. I had a chance to visit Guam several times and Saipan and listen to the stories of people there that, like yourself, a first-hand story, or the stories of sons and daughters of their parents, and those were pretty heavy battles there in the Pacific. And so with that too, with the battleships being the core of the Navy in 1941, hence the attack to first try and take out all the battleships, was there a transition then during the course of the war to aircraft carriers?
Yeah, definitely, because right from that point on, aircraft carriers were the thing. In fact, the USS Enterprise, if one for USS Enterprise there, I don't think we had any success at all, because Enterprise was about the only ship that could stay in decent shape there. Every time a Saratoga would get out there, it'd get damaged there, and they'd send it back for someplace for repairs. So USS Enterprise and the Lexington, especially the Enterprise, were the aircraft carriers that were used and really helped tide us over there until we was able to build new aircraft carriers and help them out.
How did you and others feel about the performance, the quality of the Japanese Navy that you're going into combat with? Were they comparable to us?
They were faster. They're faster ships. I don't know how it ended up there, because we found out later they were much faster ships than than we were, and as a result, there it would have been pretty disastrous there if in an open battle. I think to start with. Later on, it's all right because, but once we got some newer battleships there, but up to that time, the Japanese ships were much faster. But once they were lost there, they weren't be able to be replaced like we were able to replace our losses.
Mm-hmm. Well, you're on the Pennsylvania, out in the Pacific Ocean, engaged in the Pacific War. What awareness did you and others have of the war in Europe and the North Atlantic? And were you informed of what was going on, or were you?
We would get word there because there's communications there that would come out, and each ship had communications so the people, their crew, would get the word on anything that was coming on. We knew about everything except the atomic bomb. Nobody knew about that till actually it happened. Sure. It's quite a secret.
But at any point during the war, did you have doubts about the ability of the United States and the Allies to prevail in the war in the Pacific, the war in the Atlantic, Europe, Asia? Was there periods of doubts?
There was doubt until we started fighting back, till we started taking back some of the islands that they'd taken. Then that gave us confidence, and they knew that we were on the right track there, and so that really helped our morale because we needed to pick up too, and. Just Jimmy Doolittle and his group bombing Japan, and then the turning point in the war, the battle midway, that was like a shot in the arm there that really helped because the morale knew that we were on the right way. We're going to do it.
It seems to me that I read at one point that the Battle of Midway became through a tip through intelligence over a water tower.
Yes,
or something.
we were very fortunate there, and due to the facts there that Japan didn't know whether we had planes from aircraft carrier or land boys lane. They started juggling back and forth torpedoes or bombs and back and forth there, and they delayed them there, able to get planes off, and as a result that helped us, and we was able to sink their aircraft carriers there due to the fact there that they were confused on whether they should be careful for land-based planes or aircraft carriers or what. They didn't know what to expect, and that helped us.
When names like Bull Halsey and Admiral Nimitz come up, what thoughts do you have looking back on?
They were great, especially when Admiral Nimitz came to Hawaii after the attack on Pearl Harbor there, and he had confidence. He came on I saw him on our ship. I never spoke to him, but he came on our ship there, and it just seemed like he knew what to do there, and he was going to get it done there. Just like another John Wayne. He's going to do it, and he showed us how, and he directed us there, and I take pride in knowing that he was on our side.
It's nice to hear. As the war is going on, and the war ends in Europe, and then we're preparing for an invasion of Japan. Were you part of the preparations, the Pennsylvania, for that invasion?
I was there after in fact, let me mention about my ship was in the first, you might as well call it the first invasion in the Philippines there. Mm-hmm. And my ships, we had troops all landed already on Leyte itself. And a lot of our ships were in port steaming around, furnishing them with supplies or whatever they needed, all kinds of ships in the harbor. We got the word this Japanese fleet coming up from the south there, through Surigao Strait in the southern part of the Philippines, coming up that way. The 6 of us old battleships were up there, and we got the word on them, and we waited for them. That's what they call crossing the T. 6 of us battleships going back and forth there, and this Japanese fleet coming up there. The ships were all in line. They couldn't spread out at all. The only ship that could shoot at us was the lead ship. That's what they call the tactician's dream, crossing the T there. So when they got within range, wow. we wiped out the whole fleet there. But then after that was an invasion of Well, let me mention about there in Lady Gulf that day, and after we crossed, before we crossed the T. By that time, Japanese were getting desperate. They started something called kamikaze planes. Planes, pilots were trained to take off, don't worry about landing, because most of them were not going to come back. We're steaming around there in Lady Gulf itself, and we got the word there that watch out for kamikaze planes. At that time, my battle station was steering that 33,000 battleship. I'm steering this 33,000-ton battleship. We got the word there. Kamikaze plane hit a destroyer, the Abner Reed, over in that area. Captain said, hard right rudder, steer for that torpedo, give it as small a target as possible. Now, a ship doesn't turn like a car. A car goes right around the corner. Ship kind of goes around like this. And I watch the wake from a torpedo coming, and I can see it through the porthole. Everybody hold on. I got to hold on the bar over here. Got the rudder over hard as I can. Hold on. It went right underneath us. Evidently, there when the torpedo went off, it was tilted a little bit. It went a little bit deeper there. That kind of gives you a thrill.
Well, 75 years later, I can see why. It's giving me a thrill hearing that story.
After we got through it, the Philippines there, our guns would not shoot straight. It sent us back to the States, back to Bethlehem Steel, get the new guns. In the meantime, they have an invasion of Iwo Jima and Okinawa. That's the last step before the invasion of Japan. We went back to the States there, get new guns, and came back the latter part of July. We're coming back there to Okinawa where the ships are going to assemble. By that time, which was 2 months later there, about 2 months later there, we're on our way back to Japan, get ready for the invasion.
And at that point, Mickey, we're going to take a brief pause here for a public service announcement and come back for the final 15 minutes of our conversation today.
Okay.
So there you are, shuffling through a stack of resumes, and you come to mine. This is it. First impression. My way in. But can my resume show you how I truly stand out? Like that I was studying, going to night school while working 2 jobs just to help my parents pay for groceries. Or being the first one to always step up. No, that's something you just can't put on paper. Look beyond the resume and discover new ways to develop great talent that is dedicated, hardworking, and determined like me.
Welcome back to Interesting People. My name's Tom Lorentzen, the host of this show. This is filmed here at Chabot College in Hayward, California. My guest today has been Mr. Mickey Ganitch, a veteran of Pearl Harbor, of the attack of the Day of Infamy 75 years ago this December, on December 7th, 1941. Mickey was just explaining to us about the preparations to get ready for the invasion of Japan. And so you're on the USS Pennsylvania, you're part of the whole gathering. What were you being told? What was to be expected for a pending invasion? And then what changed that whole equation?
Get ready for the invasion of Japan, which was very bad. By that time, Iwo Jima and Okinawa were already settled. The next step was invasion of Japan. We're steaming back to Okinawa where the ships are all congregated. Something happened there August 6th, 1945. This is 1945 now. They dropped the atomic bomb on Hiroshima. It's a complete surprise. Nobody knew about any kind of bomb, or they even thought about any kind of bomb.
And after the explosion, I also took some photographs with my private camera.
3 days later, August 9th, they dropped an atomic bomb on Nagasaki. 3 days later, August 12th, we got into Okinawa. All the other ships were already in there, making preparations for the invasion of Japan, which is going to be in September and October in that time. That night, 8:30 that night, Japanese plane came in with the lights on. Nobody fired a shot at. Aimed its torpedo at the first ship it saw. Well, you hold up the battleship. The ship.
The ship. Oh, this one here.
Yeah. It aimed its torpedo at the closest big ship it saw, the battleship Pennsylvania. The torpedo hit back here by the propellers. Now the living compartment of the quartermasters was back there. I had 26 quartermasters. I lost 20 of them that night. Next morning, the Japanese asked for peace. We're the last big ship in World War II. They told us in the shallow ground there at Okinawa, in case we sink, we'd just sink in the mud there. But we were able to stay afloat. Meantime, they're getting ready to sign a peace treaty in Tokyo Bay. They told us to go on, put us in a dry dock. We're just partially in the dry dock there because we're 608 feet long. Put us in dry dock. In the meantime, they already signed the peace treaty in Tokyo Bay. The war is over. They sent us back to the States there, to Bremerton, Washington there, on their own power, by ourselves. When the torpedo hit us, it wiped out the propellers on the right-hand side because the ship has 4 propellers, 2 on each side there in the back. One on the left was pretty good, one was not so good. We started back to the States there, Bremerton, Washington there. We started having problems with the propeller. It stopped the ship, put divers over the side, because all big ships have deep-sea divers. Put divers over the side, see what they can do with that propeller. Meantime, sharks come around the ship there. We pulled the divers back out of the water, put boats in the water with the Marines, because all big ships have Marines on them. They kept the sharks away from the divers so they could work on the propellers. We came back to under our own power to get back to the States there. We came to Bremerton, Washington. Now it's 1946. Now they want to have it. They already saw what damage there the atomic bomb would have Nagasaki and Hiroshima. Now they want to see what damage it'd have on ships. Now our ship is already damaged there. We had a skeleton crew because the war's over. So they sent us out to Bikini Atoll, which is west of the Hawaiian Islands there, with all kinds of ships. They had Japanese ships, German ships, Dutch ships, British ships, all kinds of variety of ships, because they wanted to find out what damage it would have, the atomic bomb would have on ships. Now it put us in the atoll itself there at Bikini, took us off the ship there. We anchored it and left it in there. We got off the ship about 10 miles away on another ship. They said, make sure you close your eyes, look away from the air blast, because the air blasters are going to be first. Close your eyes, put your eyes over your arm. I still saw the flash. Now they want to find out what damage it'd have on animals. Now I'm a farm boy from Ohio there, so they put me in charge of the animals, the goats, mice, pigs, and sheep. Put me in charge of these animals, put them out throughout the ship. Now we spread the ships out, put the atomic bomb right in the center, underwater blast, and put us off in another ship. Now we could watch this because it's like a tsunami there, the wall of water coming up there. USS Saratoga aircraft carrier was one of them there. It's practically standing on his tail there. So we could watch that blast, and now I'd go back on the ship, show them where I put all the animals. They said, your clothes will be radioactive. Throw away your clothes and take a good shower. That's the protection I had. Must not affect me too much because I got 13 grandchildren, 18 great-grandchildren, and 8 great-great-grandchildren here. I'm a bionic man. I just don't have a $6 million to go with it. Well, that's the protection I had.
Well, without any doubt, I know you're a man of vitality, Mickey.
But the one thing I did, I enlisted in the post office in Oakland January 21st of 1941. Ended up my Navy career at the Navy Recruiting Office in the Post Office in Oakland, October 10th of 1963. I ended up the same place I started with. I thought that was really something.
You brought these photographs. What intrigued me, I'm going to hold one up here. This is General... Explain who's in the photograph.
This is General MacArthur signing the peace treaty there on the USS Missouri in Tokyo Bay, September 2nd, 1945.
The second pen to British General Percival, commander at the surrender of Singapore. MacArthur uses 6 pens in all, affixing what will be the most important signature in Japan to the document that ends permanently that nation's regime of terror and aggression.
Skinny General Wainwright, the one that he left a baton in Kriegsdorf. See how skinny he is? They're packing nothing to me. He's tall, but he's skinny. He was in the Bataan Death March and all marched all. And that's General Percival in behind him of a British people. Now in the background of the officers on the USS Missouri, not a one of them with a necktie. Not a ribbon, no nothing. General MacArthur said, we worked to get this far. We will be in a working uniform. We signed a peace treaty. Now, let's see the other one there. See the one that... Now, this is a Japanese delegation, one that signed the peace treaty. You see them with top hats there and ribbons and medals and stuff like that. What a contrast there from what way we looked at. But General MacArthur really showed up the Japanese because they go much for that dignity and all that. And so it was kind of a insulting to the Japanese that we'd be in a working uniform. We signed the peace treaty, but that's the way it turned out like that.
And I find that quite interesting because General MacArthur was known as a man of strong ego, strong presence, etc. But yet he had all the military people dressed in simple uniforms, no medals, no ties, and the simplicity.
He did it on purpose. I think that's what I hear. He did it on purpose there, just to show up the Japanese there, just for they're the ones that attacked us there, and we won the war, and that's I think that's I'm not sure what you call a affront against the Japanese or whatever, but that's why they were dressed like that.
Interesting. Well, Mickey, we've got about 6 more minutes to go in this interview. I want to now you were just getting ready to turn what age now?
Well,
if I might ask.
In November will be the anniversary of my 48 and a half birthday. I will be 97 years old.
97 years old.
November 18.
And you've got such an ebullience to you, such vitality.
I found the secret of long life, which really makes a difference. Keep breathing. Because the alternative isn't so good.
Yeah, no, I can put... Now, you were from Ohio originally?
Yes, Ohio.
A small town? Or
small town, 21 population, I think, 2,100 population. I think that's counting the cats and dogs, too.
Okay.
But I came to California in 1939 because... jobs were very scarce back in Ohio because as after the Depression there, in fact, I worked on WPA, which is a Work Progress Administration there, one of the jobs that Franklin Delano Roosevelt created there during the Depression there, and that helped out. But that's the only job available. And I had a brother and sister already living in California there, and they said, come on out there and to California there, and we'll see if we can get you a job there, which they did. But I worked there, but... due to the unrest, in fact, you can really call me a draft dodger because in 1940, a fall of 1940, every man 21 years and older had to register for the draft and going into the Army. Now, they said if you go in, some of the people I knew said if you go in the Army, you may be sleeping outside and get cold food and all that. So I joined the Navy. So you call me a draft dodger, right? Because I wasn't 21, but I would be in a couple of months. And the next draft was going to be in the spring of 1941, so I joined the Navy instead.
I think you're a pretty wise man. No affront to the people of the U.S. Army. I think you're a pretty wise decision. Now, in the years that have followed, you have become a major spokesperson for the event at Pearl Harbor, the war in the Pacific in particular. Tell us about, you speak before all kinds of clubs and schools.
I talked to schools, club. I talked to elementary schools, middle schools, high schools, colleges, clubs. Anyone want to listen to me there? And I talk there. And now that I have PowerPoint, I use PowerPoint in my talks, and I average between 30 and 35 speaking engagements a year. I've had as many as 6 speaking engagements in one day.
I can understand.
And of course, I kind of run on remote control by the end of the day, though. But I'm proud that I can talk, especially the kids. I appreciate talking to the kids there, because one of the things I emphasize there, the kids need to be accountable for their own action. Don't depend on their parents or the relatives to bail them out. Learn by experience there. But if you make a mistake, don't be afraid to admit it. Be accountable for your own actions there. Learn, and you'll be a better person. And the country will be a better person. That you think that way and act that way. So I think that's the biggest problem there. And nowadays, with all this political stuff, and this has to be politically correct and all that kind of stuff, I get tired of this kind of stuff. Because my wife's a registered Republican, I'm a registered Democrat. We haven't voted for a particular party for the last 15, 20 years there, and we've been married 53 years, and maybe that's why we get along. We vote for who we want. We don't care what party they're in.
That's great. Now, you were at Pearl Harbor for the 50th anniversary in 1991, and you're going back this December for the 75th anniversary. Right. What thoughts are on your mind as you prepare to go back to Pearl Harbor 75 years later?
Well, it brings back memories there, and they said, how can you do that? I said, you can't change what happened there. And I think about the future. We had our enemies there. Japan was our enemies once. Now one of our best friends there. You can't change what happened there. Think about the future. It's like in the movies there, break a leg or something like that. The show goes on there. To me, it's like a game, football game, especially because that's one of my main sports there is football. You're maybe enemies on a field. Maybe you go out to supper together there. You aren't going to change what happened. Think about the future. That's what I do. And in fact, they said, how can you even associate with the Japanese? Well, my wife drives a Japanese car there, so think about the future.
Well, and thinking about the future, as you're getting ready to turn 97, go to Pearl Harbor on the 75th anniversary of the attack, and you were there. What do you think of the future? What do you tell young people when you're out giving talks in schools and having conversations with them?
The main thing there is be accountable for your own action. I think that's so more important to the kids there, to be accountable for their own actions. And don't be afraid to make a mistake. When all these inventions, I tell them all these inventions are made. They didn't. When they invent something, they didn't do it on the first lick. Maybe it took them several times before they perfected it all that. So if you make a mistake, next time maybe you won't make a mistake. But the main thing is for the kids there to be accountable for their own actions there.
Well, Mickey, as we bring this conversation to a close here, I'd like to take the liberty to say how exceptional it is to have an opportunity to sit down and visit with you. I think it's a unique privilege for me. It's a privilege for the people who watch this program. You have shown us the best of what I think this country is about. You're dedicated to the country. You're dedicated to the future. You understand the past, and you're optimistic. You look at young people. You give them good advice. And I think that it's been one of the great privileges of my life to have you on this show today.
I was helped so many times while I was in the service. I dedicated myself to help others. Right now, I'm chaplain in the Fleet Reserve. I'm chaplain in American Legion. I'm chaplain in Veteran Force. I'm chaplain in Masons. I'm adjutant treasurer for Disabled American Veterans. I'm a head usher in my church. I've been the head usher in my church for 50 years. I think it's a permanent job because the guy before me died. I'm a volunteer at the VA clinic in Oakland. I got over 7,000 hours volunteering. I take veterans to their appointments, whatever they are. I have my own car. I get around there, and I'll always keep in mind there the secret of long life, to keep breathing.
Well, Mickey, you're an American treasure, and it's been my privilege to have you on the show today, and thank you for everything you've done with your life and for so many people.
I just happened to be there.
And I'm so glad you're here today.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mickey.
Thank you.
Bye
Thank
now.
you.